With some of the events over the weekend, of course, the burial of Fidel over at Bondo. And Henry, I'll begin with you, just what you said now, that it shows what is possible for Kenya. Whilst on one hand, we saw the leaders come together across the political divide, even for the funeral service, and a lot of calls for dialogue and, you know, calls from court and the government side saying, yes, we will do this. But on the other hand, the trend that appears to be growing, and this is not the first time, members allied to Jubilee, whenever they attend these court functions and they're, you know, called upon to address the masses, they're heckled, they're booed, they're not given time to speak, most of them.
Just to correct, it's not a court function.
Or court events. Well, you know what I mean. So I'll begin with you, Henry.
One, I think I wouldn't begin by overplaying the issue of CS of Defense being heckled, because within that very funeral session, Sakaja spoke and he wasn't heckled. So we need to be able to ask ourselves, what is it that citizens are asking for? This is a country where we hear politicians talking about dialogue. We hear politicians saying that the Constitution has entrenched public participation. But citizens are yearning for spaces where they can meet and dialogue with leaders, but they don't. So when funerals or public rallies emerge, these are the only spaces citizens have to express themselves. And that's why we see this coming up. So I wouldn't see it as a negative thing per se, but the choice, if it were in a public political rally, I would totally have condoned it. I felt bad that in a funeral situation they had to do this, and that they forgot that there had been a lot of coordination and brotherhood right from Nairobi, that this animosity was something that Fidel himself had tried to put aside and said that there are times we might not agree, but we need not fight because we've disagreed. So that's my thinking, but I'm also saddened that come Sunday, Jubilee politicians have gone back on what the president said in a funeral service in Nairobi. And all other senior leaders in Jubilee tended to be saying, we are happy to come back and discuss. And then we hear Moses Kuria, Kindiki and others saying that what is there to be dialogued about. So I find that a bit problematic, that even within Jubilee, there isn't one statement being given to us, that if the president says he's happy to sit and dialogue on things that are ailing the country, and we know for sure there are a number of things that are ailing the country. It's not an academic exercise to say, let's search what is ailing the country. Every Kenyan is aware that there are certain critical issues that are affecting us, and we need to dialogue. And dialogue in itself means if you are in power, then you can put up a framework. I don't see why Jubilee is shying away. But I'm also getting saddened anytime somebody talks about dialogue, even though the Constitution says there would be sufficient participation spaces for Kenyans, whether they are politicians or not, within their governance. We tend to go back to say anybody who's asking for dialogue is seeking nusumkate, which is a bad thing, because we dialogued in Kenya before this Constitution for IPPG reforms to happen. That dialogue helped heal the country. And people there could not have said that the people who are saying no elections without reforms at that time wanted nusumkate. So this belittling due processes and besmirching them with the rhetoric that opposition leaders want half a loaf, they want half a carpet, they want toilets. I think leaders, especially the majority leader in Senate, the majority leader in National Assembly, have to be advised.
But also, are they not coming from
they are leaders now, they are not just party players.
Yes, as you say that on one hand, but on the other hand, I also note the Jubilee fraternity, and I do not speak for them, but the argument has been that the reason why they're belittling this dialogue calls is because they're not coming from a good place in as far as already the ultimatums, preconditions set for them. So why is it one hand is allowed to come and say, let's talk, on this and these conditions. And when they also say, let's talk on this and this condition, it becomes an issue. But I'll come to you now, Senator, on the same. And first, to address the issue, yes, not a CORD event, but happening in a CORD stronghold, and also that, of course, unfortunately touching on the CORD leadership, seeing that Fidel was Odinga's son. So to just clarify that. But this also happened when Kajwang was buried. You realize most of the Jubilee leaders, though they were in full support of the proceedings up to the funeral, chose to stay away from the funeral. So is this some form of balkanization or a trend that's negative that we are seeing, Senator?
You see, one thing for a fact is that it has been acceptable practice in some areas in this country that those platforms also, it was almost acceptable, you know, that you can speak politics in those type of platforms. So I think people have variance in terms of their cultures and norms. And let's not bury our heads in the sand and pretend you want everybody to be like you. We don't keep bodies for 7 days. We don't keep bodies for 7 hours if possible. So I think everybody has their cultural trends, and we must also accept that it has evolved over time. When I was growing up, I was seeing politics and funerals every other day. So I think unless we decide, those groups of people decide deliberately that they want to now disengage the element of politics. It has been common. It has been common practice.
Politics.
Just a minute.
So there's intolerance in that politics.
There's no intolerance. Let me tell you something. Intolerance, people have different ways. It is a known fact that if you disagree with Raila Odinga, but the party of choice within the region called Luo Nyanza, let's not bury our heads in the sand. That if you go to a platform of that magnitude, of that nature, you will get heckled. So let's not pretend that we have not seen this trend. It's not a trend that is emerging. It's a trend that has always been there.
So it's acceptable because it's
I'm not saying
there?
I'm not saying it's acceptable. There are people who do not, who have their ways of expressing displeasure. You see, so if you're there, if you, as Sophia, can sit somewhere put, because I could see even on the dais, people were getting irritated over the kinds of booing that were coming or heckling. So it's not that the fact that people were not restless about it. Raila himself went ahead and said, these were my guests. What you did was unacceptable. That was primitive. So I think we have seen it. And therefore, I heard what Kalonzo tried to put into context, that in Luo Nyanza, unfortunately, when even Kalonzo himself has suffered the brunt of part of this heckling, if there is a displeasure, they will express it in no uncertain terms.
Is this something that is likely to change, or should we just accept that? I think
for me, my advice to them is that they need to change it. They need to change it. That's why I'm saying it might not be acceptable, but it is always expected. And therefore, and it is the diversity. When some of us went on stage, we were cheered. So I think that what happens is people are just trying to give you a feedback of how their message does or does not resonate with them. And that is what I think is a trend which I think many Kenyans also have issues with.
Okay, Weda, what's your take on
it? The sun is still shining on my friend Senator Omar, because they know he has abandoned this party with Wiper and this with Raila. So he's very popular with them. The day he identifies strictly with Raila, he will not speak in those rallies. One thing which was very positive, both in Kajwang's funeral and Fidel's funeral, was that they set a stage where, as a community, we are learning to bury our dead as quickly as possible. Many years ago, I used to believe you also need to keep them low. Now, I believe we must start embracing cremation, quick burial. If I died today, I would love to be buried within 2-3 days. And then, secondly, I said in this program one time, and I repeat, that you shall know them by the company they keep. I saw his party leader, Hon Kalonzo Musyoka, in a colobus monkey. The other time it was Raila. That's a very rare game. It's a criminal offense, actually, to have those things. But those theatrics, again, I hope we will develop against them. The booing is normally stage managed. It's never spontaneous. They booed the MP for Kisumu Central. They would boo the rest. I said again in this program last time that the men in black did not just spring from somewhere. They're organized, and you can see it from Baba's own body language. I've been in that game, I understand. I know our people very well. What I can say is that Fidel went, and may God rest his soul in peace. And it was sad he left a very young family. I heard the Mombasa people say, we will name this street, we will name that street. Before we name Wangari Maathai's street, and we name maybe Kajwang, let us accept when people are dead that they are dead. But like Dr. Miles Monroe says, let us die empty. Let us leave a legacy that so and so lived, and they left for us here. Let us not over glorify people that we can just moon because they were either so and so son or so and so's daughter. But any iota of achievement. Today, if God bless me with a son, a small son, and my senator here went to be with the Lord earlier than me, I'd prefer to name him because he was at least a senator and a human rights person. But this other fellow, let us let his soul rest in peace. But to say that, hey, I think that is giving our children a wrong paradigm.
All right, Henry, I'll bring
just
in on
before
this.
you proceed, I think it's a bit fallacious for him to say that everybody knows that Wiper and ODM are joined to the hip right now through a coalition instrument that is deposited within the register of political parties. So you cannot abandon Kalonzo Musyoka. If I would abandon my party, by now you'll have a rebel tag. You see these careless statements we throw around. The truth is, I have had almost a personal relationship with the Prime Minister for many years. And yes, at some point it was, I had to jump ship. But you see, once you are able to now firmly come back onto ship in terms of the Quad coalition, you continue to pursue the kinds of ideas you had. So I think it's just wrong for anybody to make that insinuation. Everybody knows I'm a Wiper. All right.
All right, thank you, Senator. I'll come to Henry Maina, and the question is, at the funeral, Fidel's funeral, do you think this was the right place to unveil Kajwang as the one to run for his brother's seat?
Yeah, to campaign for him, because at the end of the day, first, the whole process had been, some have criticized it as a sham, the fact that he got that direct nomination. You remember at Kajwang's funeral, Raila Odinga had said that this would not automatically go to a family member. And then after that botched nomination exercise, and then all the events that have passed by, and then finally to what happened over the weekend.
Parties make decisions. And parties are groupings of people who have joined in solidarity, and they think that they share certain positions. So we can't prescribe to political parties what they will do. They can only prescribe to themselves certain processes. We know that that nomination was a sham, but we were also told ably by the elections board that all the candidates were told to try and come up with a mechanism through which a fair nomination process can happen. And that they had a list within their constitution how those nominations can happen. Did they totally go against their constitution? No. Was it a process that pleases everyone? No. And that's the challenge. But Senator Omar has already indicated that it so happens, even in Kenya, it's not just in Luo Nyanza that funerals are places of politics. It's all over. I think we had discussions when people went to Michuki's funeral on who is going to succeed him in Murang'a. Those discussions were there. It's just that they were not as amplified. We had recent funerals when the senator of Nyeri, not being in TNU, in TNA and PNU, being rubbished.
That's a good name for that party.
And heckled. So when you think through this is a situation we need to know. Could Honorable Raila not speak to the issue of Moses Kajwang being their nominee? It's impossible. Try and think, let's just be fair to each other and see when Gaiseri was nominated by the president as the nominee for internal security. is there any place you would see the president and the deputy go and not say how they are fixing security processes and they have already now nominated an able person?
Before we go, Senator, you say it was above board, the whole process to get him.
I'm not saying it was above board. Okay. And I asked myself 3 or so questions saying no. But the preserve of who and how they will nominate and run those elections are preserve of a political party, which is duly registered, which has a constitution, and in the event that they violated any of their own rules, it's their membership. Because it is this challenge that Kenyans are beginning to have. We all choose not to be members of ODM, but we choose to criticize them when things go wrong. We all choose not to be members of TNA, but we choose to criticize them. Political party playing is about membership. So those members who felt slighted have jumped ship, which is within a political party's rule. Those who thought otherwise have contested. And once those contestations are done, a nominee is arrived at.
All right.
And we can no longer continue second-guessing the party that it is wrong.
Senator, as you comment on the same, I think some of what we've heard in terms of the criticism coming through for ODM is because not just based on this particular exercise they've had on the nomination, but from the election or the list for the leadership that now is in place in ODM, expanding even that from Naivasha, that list they came up with. Also the February 2013 botched elections as well. So 2014 it is. It's been just uncertain as far as how ODM conducts
one thing I like about this whole debate is that I told ODM during our joint PG, maybe people expect of them a higher pedestal.
Yes.
They don't expect it from definitely the TNAs and the URPs, but from ODM there's a certain expectation. That's why everybody puts a certain scrutiny on ODM and probably its sister parties. So I think that for me, I told them they should not be iked by the debate. Maybe it's a debate to improve them. Because I was one of those who actually took a go on their nomination exercise, telling them how it has pushed out party members, including myself. So I will not be insincere about the fact that sometimes there is a way in which transparency and a certain democratic process does help, even in terms of the image of the party, and to strengthen the perception of democratic competition, which is enshrined in the Constitution. But I think I was fairly satisfied with the rebuttal or the explanation given to us by John Badi, chairman of ODM. And I think as a party or as a coalition, it was no other than Kalonzo Musyoka who handed over the nomination ticket to Moses Kajwang, and we as a coalition committed ourselves. But I was quite firm on the fact that, you know, we need to strengthen our intra-democratic processes, notwithstanding. And I say the fact that these criticisms are coming to us only through great love is their great concern.
So what's your understanding of that direct nomination,
there's great love,
of how Kajwang got it? Because they were all put down and the team, ODM, the officials were to decide on the person. And what's arcing the others is that it's not clear what it is, the edge he had above the other
John
candidates.
said, Badi, the chairman of ODM said, is they decided they would go the delegate system because universal suffrage was one that they lacked the capacity to do. And many parties do not have the capacity for intra-universal suffrage processes. I think it will have borne the same results and the same discontent. So they agreed on the delegate system, only for them to go and have a disrupted process. In fact, there was an allegation that one of the candidates had actually taken about 300 or so of those delegates across to Arusha, or is it to Tanzania, somewhere in Tanzania. And therefore, they were just coming to rubber stamp a process, and therefore, they said that that delegate system was not foolproof. It might give the perception of democratic, but it is not democratic. So therefore, the violence ensued. Yeah? In fact, I remember Musila, our chairman of Wiper, told them, where are you guys usually when these men in black or men in white come into your party affairs? So it's not that there's not been intra-party, intra-coalition discussion very, very vehemently, because we believe we want to strengthen one another. So, but you know, the criticisms that come from outside the party are not genuine, some of them. Why the TNA is so concerned, or Murkomen I saw is so concerned why there was no transparent nomination process. You know, in Homa Bay. That's hypocritical. So that's said and done. Then Mbadi told us the candidates came to Nairobi. they were told go to a corner and agree. I thought that was totally a sham. You cannot tell the candidates to go into a corner and agree of who of them is going to take a job. You can't tell 5 anchors and say, listen, now we want to size down KTN. So 5 of you go to a corner and agree on one of you. That was totally insensitive. So definitely the verdict that was returned was that none of us could agree. So they laid out to them the processes that the party has, the options. 1, either to go universal suffrage, 2, a direct nomination. And they said there was consensus, and that is what for me was the turning point, that there was consensus that yes, we will agree on anybody you nominate. Definitely, in a direct nomination exercise, there's usually bias. There will be bias on one candidate over others, all factors considered. There would be. Therefore, I do not, even though this process of nominations are provided within almost all party constitutions, the process of direct nomination, it should be the exception in terms of when that nomination has to be taken. And I think I disputed the similarities that were drawn. I said, you see, when they said, oh, TNA also had, in quotes, a direct nomination for Moses Kuria, I said, but we are not TNA. That's the whole idea. We are not Wiper. For instance, if you say, they said, oh, you Wiper gave Mutula Kilonzo. I said, maybe it was acceptable practice at that point. You know, there was almost a barrage of what is it called?
Okay.
To conclude that point, there was a barrage of opinion that Kethi, almost an emerging public opinion that Kethi should be Makueni senator.
Right.
And then last minute, Kethi was edged out by IBC. We had 2 days to agree on a candidate.
Okay. Asante, Senator. Maybe I'll ask the same question to Ambrose Weda. What's your take on how the whole thing was run?
Let me not comment about how the candidate was arrived at, because that's normal.
When you say normal, what do you mean? That it's okay for them to...
That whoever Baba wants goes in, always. There will always be gerrymandering and sub-rattling all over, either through a warped-up nomination or so. I know that. And instead of blaming Baba, I blame those people and ourselves. Personally, I blame myself when I had those difficulties. And I blame myself for the reason that I had not built myself to a level where I could also speak to the people directly and they give me, so that I have to go through Baba, and when Baba refuses, I blame him. I said I will stop there and go into the process of building myself. What I didn't like about unveiling Moses in that funeral, that was Raila's funeral. He was bereaved. He was the one being condoled. It was wrong for him to show open bias to people he knows. He knows people like Jaka Kemba. He knows even their supporters. He could have allowed his surrogates who are there to unveil Moses, but himself doing it. I think that was not only painful, it was wrong of a leader of his caliber, and he's better be told.
Do you think it would have been acceptable if others would have done it and not Raila himself?
It could have, okay. It could have been, yes.
Or it would have been a better evil?
It would have been a better evil. But himself, he have gone to condole somebody. He's lost a son, not a stepson or a cousin. He's lost his own son. He's going to say Paula to him. Then he says, you, out. It is so and so. That was sad. And Mheshimiwa Raila, there you got it very wrong. And that's the reason why sometimes even when we do politics, these are the examples that they gave about Michuki, it was not Michuki's widow coming up to say we have agreed on so. It is other people. So to that extent, it was, to me, very wrong. As we move along, I think we should also depoliticize our funerals. Although, because Raila can call a rally, and they will call a rally in southern Nyanza, in Homa Bay, and tell the people, give me this fellow. But that was an occasion which, although there was a multitude of people, it was very, very, very wrong. Okay. And he better be told that.
Can I say one thing that is appearing to be lost? Please. Yes, very briefly. I read in one of the media, and when Mama Ida was speaking, interestingly, I read it with my own eyes in one of the newspapers. When friends had met to set up Fidel's trust fund, family trust fund, Mama Ida said actually Fidel had called him to tell him that they should go to Homa Bay to campaign for Hillary.
Alila, yes.
Alila.
Yeah.
So this was a very interesting mix. I was like, oops, Mama Ida has let the cat out. So there was an argument, if it is to honor Fidel, then is it important to also consider his choice?
Yeah.
Mama Ida said it at first person. And it was, you saw that. It was actually picked by the media that Mama Ida, who's an independent candidate. So they say that Fidel himself had wanted to support Hillary, and had even requested the mother that we need to go to Homa Bay to campaign for
And that
Hillary.
election pitches Hillary, who was a very close friend of Fidel and the family. And he pitches Jakakinga Silas, who is like a child, a keen supporter, a PA, a what Honorable Raila. Even if it is politics.
Yeah. Okay.
Can't you show some moderation?